Okay. This is what we're going to do. In the first part of the lesson, I'm just going to ask you, um, questions in different topics. Yeah. And then I'm going to show you my notes, and then what's going to happen. And then I'm going to show you my sample answers. And oftentimes, there are vital points that these sample answers illustrate. Okay? So today we're going to talk about topics related to objects. Khôi, please, Phạm Hiểu Khôi. Mm. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm. Let's talk about mirrors. Would you use mirrors to decorate your room?
No, actually, because I believe that like having a mirror in your room is like a little bit weird to me since I don't really like looking at myself in the mirror and especially in my room because usually my room is quite messy and
Mm,
looking at how messy my room is just reflects a little bit of my personality as a lazy person. So no, I don't decorate my room with a mirror with a mirror.
mm, Have you ever bought mirrors?
As a gift, yes, I did
Mm,
bought a mirror like 2 years ago, to gift my friend. She was my close friend during high school, but I've
mm,
never actually bought the mirror for myself because yes, I don't really like to use mirrors, and I could just open up my phone's camera to check myself.
mm. Let's move on then. Huyền, do you usually take a mirror with you?
Mm. I don't because I don't think it's necessary. I check my appearance very carefully before I leave the house already. So I don't usually bring one with me.
Mm. Do you like looking at yourself in the mirror and how often?
Mhm. I think yes, especially after I have my makeup on, I feel a little bit more confident, and I like looking at my reflections when I'm all made up and wearing nice clothes. And I look at myself in the mirrors almost every day before I go out.
Nice. Let's talk about borrowing and lending. Thang, please.
Mhm.
Do you like to lend things to others?
Well, actually, I'm not fond of lending things to others. This is because I'm kind of reserved when having to interact with any others, and actually, moreover, I don't have I don't possess much of things that I consider important to many people. So this is why I don't lend things to any others. Mhm.
Have you ever borrowed books from others?
Well, I don't. Instead of borrowing books from others, I would just rather look it up via the internet and download the PDF files and read it offline, or whatever. So, borrowing books is definitely not my choice.
Mm. Okay, Khôi, please. Mm. Have you ever borrowed money from others?
And when I struggle with financial burden, I'll choose to borrow money from my parents, not my friends, because I think that borrowing monies from other is a bit weird. It may like it may interrupt our bonds or somewhat. So if I were to choose, I'd rather not borrow money from anyone, and I'll try to work it out on my own.
Mm. And how do you feel when people don't return the things that they borrowed from you?
Well, they disappoint me a little bit.
Mm.
I'm not really a practical person, so I don't really care about. I mean that I don't really care about the item that I gave them because when I lend people my belongings, I think that uh, it would be not necessary for me, and I would not have to use it in the near future. However, if they forgot the deadline or if they broke their promise, it, they somewhat break the connection between us.
Mm. Okay. In the next part of the test, I'm going to give you a topic. You can speak about this topic between 1 and 2 minutes, and you have 1 minute to make some notes. First, do you understand? Yes, right? I'm going to show you the full topic, but I'm also going to send the topic in the chat box, right? Then can you see it?
Yeah.
But I would like you to have a look at the screen for the time being. I'd like you to describe a traditional product in your country. You have 1 minute to make some notes first. 1 minute, 1 minute. Mhm. Okay. Remember, you can speak about this topic between 1 and 2 minutes, and don't worry if I stop you. But I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. You can have a look at the full topic in the chat box. You should start speaking now. We're gonna get the ball rolling with Huyen. Come on.
Um, when I saw this question, I immediately thought about áo dài, which is the traditional costume of Vietnam. They are mainly worn by women. Áo dài is a long dress with two side slits, and people usually pair it with loose trousers. In terms of the materials, it is usually made from silk because people want it to look elegant and comfortable. I've seen áo dài a lot because it is often worn on special occasions such as weddings or school ceremonies. And I got my first piece of clothing when I started high school. Mm, it shows the beauty of the body in a modest way. So, and it is a symbol of Vietnamese culture. I guess it represents grace and national pride.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, usually there's supposed to be a follow-up question, but well, there's no follow-up question here. So we're just gonna move on with another person. Thắng, please.
I'm here.
Mm. Remember, you can speak about this topic between 1 and 2 minutes, and don't worry if I stop you. You should start speaking now.
Actually, the first thing that comes to my mind is calligraphy on a kind of paper that I don't know is true term in English, but let me call it zaw paper. It is this really beautiful traditional art form here in Vietnam that combines two things that I actually love, history and words. So basically, it is the art of writing meaningful characters like peace or patience or happiness onto a special kind of handmade paper. So I remember running into this for the first time when I was visiting the Temple of Literature in Hanoi about 3 years ago. There was this, I would say, old master sitting in a quiet corner, and in Vietnamese we call them ông đồ, and he's just completely focused on his brushstrokes. So, as an introvert, though, I was instantly drawn to that silence. It looks really peaceful compared to the noise of the city. Well, talking about the product itself, I find it really fascinating because of how it is made. You know, the paper comes from the bark of the zaw tree, and the process is incredibly labor intensive. As far as I know, they have to soak the bark, pound it by hand, and then dry it out. So this process really creates this texture that is really soft, but also really tough. I mean, it can literally last for centuries. But what's really makes really special for me is the writing. You know, I'm a bit of a lexicophile and I'm obsessed with words. And this art form is essentially drawing with language. Um, the calligrapher used ink to express the soul of the word rather than just the meaning. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Nice. Well, there's no follow-up question, so well, something or another, and then we move on, right? In the next part of the test, I'd like to discuss with you one or two general questions related to what you have just talked about. Hoi, please. Let's talk about traditional products. In your opinion, why do people think that traditional products are important?
Because I must say that although some traditional products may seem a little bit boring, but it is still widely recognized and appreciated in that particular country. And although maybe people don't wear it as commonly, but it remains a symbol or it represents the identity of a country, and it would also be a nice souvenir for tourists who would come and buy them. And
Thank you. Do you think that in the future, some traditional products will become less important or less relevant?
well, no, I don't think so, definitely, because they carry they carry their own meanings, and they also represent our identity as well. So they should not be forgotten or should not be neglected. They also maybe educational system, they need to bring these specific items into their teachings so that they could spread awareness and like to uh, make it a milestone in the country's history and development.
Thank you. Well then, do you think that mm, social media will have a positive or negative impact on the preservation of traditional products?
Well, I believe that online platforms will definitely be a positive uh, a means of uh, will be a positive thing to promote traditional products because they you know, its influence is really great, and they could spread the awareness of these traditional items to a certain level where it will also popped up on other countries' new fits, and it will conserve the
Thank you.
traditions even.
Thank you. Let's continue. Huyen, please. Let's talk about traditions. Do you think that traditions are important for a country and why?
I think it's extremely important because
Mm,
it is the symbol of a nation's identity It's what people hold on to identify themselves. And when they feel lost, they can uh, take a look back on the traditions to find their roots.
Do you think that some traditions will inevitably disappear in the future?
Mm. I don't know about other countries, but in Vietnam, I don't think it's going to be the case because Vietnamese people are very patriotic and
Mm.
family oriented as well. So traditions is a way for them to have a chance to reunite with important people on special occasions. So I don't think they're gonna let it go.
Mm. But do you think that all traditions should be preserved?
It depends.
Mm.
I guess I've heard about certain outdated traditions when they force women or men got married very at a very young age and stuff like that should be dismissed and let go. But traditions that have a positive impact on nations, like they bring people together or bring family together, should be preserved.
Mm. Nowadays, a lot of foreign traditions are becoming popular in other parts of the world. Do you think that it's a positive or negative development?
Can you say it again?
Mm. Nowadays, lots of foreign traditions are becoming popular in various parts of the world. In your opinion, is that a positive or negative development?
I think it's a positive development uh,
Mm.
because embracing these foreign traditions doesn't mean that they will harm our own traditions.
Mm.
So, uh, yeah, people should embrace traditions from other cultures just to add some spice into life. And yeah, it's more fun that way.
Okay. Tom, please. Let's talk about learning about traditional products. Mm, do you think that it's important for children to learn about traditional products?
Well, absolutely. I mean, they can distinguish one country from another. If we do to celebrate our specific festivals or cook our traditional foods, every country would just look and feel the same. For me, traditions are what make Vietnam feel like Vietnam, and they stop us from just copying global trends recklessly without thinking about its repercussions.
Thank you.
Also,
But then what is the best way to teach children about traditional products?
uh, I think the best way to educate children about traditional product is to let them experience these traditional products themselves. And by doing so, these children will be exposed to what the ancestors have built on for many years, and then they will be more respectful towards their traditional products. And I believe that it is far more effective than just giving them theories about traditions and about traditional products.
Mm. Do you think that we should teach foreign visitors who come to, visit our country about traditional products?
I think the word teach is a little bit extreme. I believe
Mm.
that we should only introduce them to about our traditional products, and I think we should do so by promoting advertising campaigns about some stuff like chung cake. I would call it chung cake because I don't know this exact term in English. Is which is I think it's made from sticky rice and beans and so on. Yeah, uh, by that way, the foreigners will have a different look about traditions in Vietnam. And I
Thank you.
think, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I have already sent the link to the file in the chat box. You can hop on that file to see your notes. Okay. Well, overall, I thought that it was average. Yeah, average. You probably don't get to hear words like that often. But well, you're aiming for the stars. So every once in a while, you need to, understand the gravity of the mistakes that you can make, right? Gravity is big in space as well. Okay, so for the first topic, before we delve into all these details, I'm gonna let you know my overall impressions. I thought that Hoi, for instance, you were able to essentially do what you did last week. It's just that this week you didn't do speaking part two. Um, for speaking part one, I thought that your answers were sensible, like your pronunciation was clear, but there were a couple of parts during which your responses were sort of fractured. Like, I think you need to, cultivate that habit of, going through a long chunk of words without going back and forth in terms of grammar or word choice. You know? As for Huyen, I thought that you knocked it out of the park in speaking part one, so everything was fantastic. For Tang, I felt like you still couldn't really drive home like a particular message. So every time you were, answering my questions, I felt like you could have gone a bit longer, but you decided to put an end to your answers in a very abrupt way. And to do that, you used lots of mini conclusions, which I really disliked for some reason. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but I really dislike the fact that you essentially use the same trick twice in the same topic. So you have to learn to pace yourself a lot more effectively. Okay. Now okay, so let's go down the list here. For Hoi fractured answers, I did bought a mirror. I did buy a mirror. For Huyen, I thought that your answers for this particular topic were natural, right? That was a good start. Yeah, but that was a good start. And unfortunately, it didn't last. For Tang, any others? I'm not quite sure. I mean, I thought that it was wrong by virtue of, this word sounding so weird to my ears. But well, the onus is on you now to check whether, there is such a phrase, any others. I would recommend you to just say interact with other people, right? And you also use mini conclusions too often. And then for Hoi, struggle with financial burden. Um, it wasn't wrong, but it was a bit unnatural for someone of your age. You might say, um, whenever I have like financial struggles, or whenever I'm short on money, or whenever I run out of money, right? Something like that. Something like that. And then I'm not a particle person. Do you say particle?
I was thinking about the word materialistic, but somehow practical came to my mind at the time.
Practical. Oh, practical. Okay, well, right. I mean, you did say something like that, but I guess I couldn't, connect the dots because, that word was still so out of place. So yeah, materialistic would have been a much better choice. Now use that, all right? Materialistic. Hmm. Okay. So, with the exception of Huyen, uh, nobody actually nailed part one. Now for part two here. You see, and this is, I think this was where you sort of, fell off the wagon. So you had a good start, in speaking part two. There were a couple of errors. Like I mainly worn, it's mainly worn, mainly. Say that again. Outside is mainly worn
Yeah,
by.
yeah, mainly worn
Mm,
by.
good. I've seen outside a lot. So that was around the 45-second mark. And I thought that, that sort of hesitation was acceptable. A bit too long, but still acceptable because after that you were able to, push a lot of ideas out. Although, even that would only last you a couple of, seconds, like 5 or 7 seconds. But I wasn't put off by, the long pause here. Then we have school ceremonies. Yeah, okay, so you mispronounced this word. Now do that again. School ceremonies.
School ceremonies.
Mm. And then, somewhere towards the 1 minute 30-second mark, that was when you really ran out of steam. Like, you couldn't, push on. And essentially, I felt like you really ran out of things to say, and you essentially just gave up. Right? I mean, sometimes we do run out of things to say before the 2 minute mark, which is perfectly understandable. But competent speakers tend to, first of all, plan and manage their speech pretty effectively. So if they know that they're reaching a conclusion, they're gonna, say a thing or two to signal to the person that is listening to them that they are packing things in. Understand? So you can say something like, and I suppose, that's all I can say for the time being. All right. Now say that again. I suppose that's all I can say for the time being.
I suppose that was all I can say for the time being.
Sure. Right. First of all, I have never really had to employ that particular sentence because for some reason I have always managed to, just drag things out, even though a couple of times it did backfire. Right? But usually, I don't really struggle with the, 2 minute speech thing. Even though, like halfway through the speech, I might lose my rhythm, but it doesn't take long for me to, find my groove again. So it's not like a personal experience for me, but when you take the test and after essentially pouring your heart and soul into your speech and you still have like 30 seconds to go, you can just try to, pack it all in by saying, something like that. Like that's all I have to say for the time being. Okay. Now, Tang, um, so you were talking about a form of is that calligraphy or calligraphy?
Calligraphy, yeah, calligraphy.
No, 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 I'm not checking your pronunciation. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Is that calligraphy or calligraphy?
Mm, I would say calligraphy. Mm, that's what I said, but
Check.
I will
Can
check.
you please check the pronunciation of
Mm,
that word?
I will look it up.
Okay. He's completely focused on. So you were describing, that man who was writing on, I guess, a red paper, piece of paper. He was, right? He was completely focused on, and then you said that you were instantly drawn to. Well, I thought that your pronunciation was a bit murky. Like I couldn't really make out what you were saying. So can you say that again?
Mm. I was instantly drawn. Mm.
No. I was instantly drawn to him.
I was instantly drawn to him.
Yeah. Perhaps your pacing was off, but still couldn't really work out what you were saying. The process is, well, first of all, it's the process is, right? But personally, I thought that it was just a slip. So yeah, it was a slip, and I wouldn't. penalize you if I were an examiner. Tough. This is tough. Tough. One more time.
Tough.
Yeah.
Tough.
Tough. You say tough. So um there was there was too much of an all there. It should have been tough. Tough. Right? Okay. So what's the pronunciation for that word? Calligraphy or calligraphy?
Yeah, it was calligraphy. Yeah.
It's like photography, right?
Yeah, it's like
Discography,
yeah, discography, photography.
geography. All right,
Yeah, right.
sure. Next then. Now for speaking part three, I thought that all three of you did a good job. But a good job is a 7. A very good job is an 8. And um, an expert doing his job kind of thing is a 9. For Hoi here, you made a very popular, very common referencing mistake. You said it. We're talking about traditional products. So you should have said don't use them frequently. Online platforms are a positive thing to promote. So, well, I I was able to read between the lines to sort of you know foresee your message. So perhaps you can use this structure instead, or a positive factor, right? Positive factor. That helps too. I think that the word that and the relative clause would make more sense than the word to, right? Okay. Other than that, I thought that you managed yourself pretty well. Hmm. All right. But still, I would recommend Koi. I would recommend you to like cultivate that habit of delivering longer chunks of words without going back and forth with regard to the content of your ideas or your word choice or grammar. Right? It's a kind of discipline that you definitely need. And I don't assume that, a 6.5 or a 7 is going to be able to pull it off effortlessly. But it is an important, criterion to, take out when you're doing the test. Like, I feel like at your age, your style of communication mostly revolves around short chunks of words, which is sensible because I guess that's how teenagers talk. Most teenagers talk. It's just that in the speaking test, they would expect you to form more coherent sentences. Okay. So if you feel like, you are going back and forth, then in a way, you're also disrupting your examiner's comprehension. Okay. Now for Huyan, you also made the same referencing mistake. Traditions, that should be they. And also, I thought that your response for the first question was a bit short. It wasn't wrong, but it was a bit short. And for me, the rule of thumb when it comes to speaking part three is that the first question is always the question with which you you get to do your own thing, right? So you have to grab the bull by the horns and extend your ideas the best way that you can. Because after that, your examiner is gonna ask you, 10,000 questions to check your genuine fluency. So build up a good momentum from the start of speaking part three. And you should also try to make a good impression, right out the gate. Because if the examiner feels like, you're off topic right from the get-go, or that your fluency doesn't make a strong impression, then it's gonna be really hard for you to, make a better impression later on. Okay? In place, embrace. I knew that you were saying embrace, but I thought that your pronunciation was a bit unclear. Okay, now say the word again.
Embrace.
Okay. Now for Tang, the best way to educate children. All right, so you paraphrased, so you used a different word instead of teach, but I thought that it was not enough. I mean, I don't think that we're supposed to be obsessed with, paraphrasing, but there are other ways for you to stall for time instead of just repeating virtually, the question that was given to you. That's lazy, in my opinion. You could say something like, well, I suppose that, there are various ways to do this, but, the best option would be to, do this and that. Right? I mean, I've never really talked about it in most of my speaking courses because, well, most of my students don't really speak the way you do. So, well, that's something you need to, keep tabs on. I mean, there are a couple of students who tend to essentially just mechanically repeat the questions that they have been given. But, these are few and far between, and well, don't make the same mistake, right? There's nothing wrong with like stalling for time when you haven't really figured out what you want to say, but repeating the question is completely unnecessary. Not that, I myself have always managed to, successfully avoid doing so, but it's something that I tend not to do. If I can answer the question directly, I'm going to do that. And if I need some time to gather my thoughts, I'm going to say something like, well, from my perspective, there are various options, but the best thing to do is, right? So try to rephrase in a more elegant way. Introduce them about, all right, so you made also a very common mistake. Introduce them to, right? By that way, by doing so, okay? All right, well, so all of these notes should be the entirety of my feedback. Have you guys got any question for me? Any question?
I don't have any question.
I don't. Don't repeat everything. It's, it's mechanical. Thắng.
So far, no.
So what did you say again?
So far, no questions.
Okay, so far, no question. Right. So we're gonna have a short break, and when we return, we'll go through some of the sample answers here. Right, I'm gonna resume the class at 8:55. All right. Okay, let's continue. Call you in the building.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna go through a few sample answers. So at this point, you should know that in speaking part one, there are two types of topics. So the first type would be the legendary, iconic, inevitable type. And it has four main topics: hometown, education, or work, and accommodation. So after one of these four, the examiner is just going to move on with less common topics. And mirrors would definitely be one of the less common topics. And I think that when it comes to like the second type of speaking topics, which is the uncommon type, um, the rule of thumb is really for you to just maintain a high level of fluency. If you can use advanced words here and there, fine. But I think the trick of the trade is always to maintain a high level of fluency. So if you can be as descriptive as possible and tell a story, think about, a past event and then give details to what happened back then. And when it comes to uncommon topics, one of the major pitfalls, um, which something that Tang already fell for, was to act like you didn't have anything to say and you struggled verbally, right? Examiners are not going to give you the benefit of the doubt if you're not going to, take matters into your own hands and keep on extending your answers, then they're going to mark you down, right? They're not going to give you any point for sympathy, okay? So even when it comes to topics that are uncommon, like the topics that you have never really talked about before, try to maintain a high level of fluency and also maintain like a sensible degree of like complexity in your grammar. Of course, you have to pronounce words correctly, and one of the best ways to do so is to, tell a story or make up a story. Essentially, do something to essentially allow you to, just keep on speaking, right? Okay, now let's go through a few sample answers. Now, Huyen, please, the first one. Would you use mirrors to decorate your room?
I think that's a very lovely suggestion. It's just that for me, for the time being, I don't have my own room. I'm living in an apartment with my mom, and the living room double functions as my room. So I don't really think that I can get to have my way with this particular room. But if the ball were in my court, then yes, I would definitely buy a nice mirror and put it somewhere in the room.
Okay, so I think that I've had to make a point regarding that particular phrase. If you want to have your way with someone, it implies that you want to sexually assault that person. So I think the safer phrase to use would be have things my way, right? To have things my way or do things your way, do things my way, right? So yeah, that is just a suggestion. And as you can tell, like this answer is not that sophisticated. It's just that like I was trying to give more details, and that's something that you are supposed to do when you're doing the speaking test. Okay, let's move on then. Have you uh do you like looking at yourself in the mirror? Hoi, please. We're gonna jump through some of the questions here. I'm just trying to illustrate certain points. Do you like looking at yourself in the mirror?
Well, I think it depends. I have to say that I'm kind of a vain person when I'm in the comfort of my home. I do have a look at myself in the mirror every once in a while. And yes, and you know, if that's a good hair day, then I might give myself some compliments, which sounds ridiculous, but it's a nice way to, boost my mood. But some of the times, after a hard day at work, or when I have overslept, I don't really enjoy looking at myself in the mirror because my face is either swollen or it's just too skinny because of all the hard work.
Okay, cool. So as you can see, this is quite a practical example, right? Where did I get this answer from? Okay, so it was from the transcript of a video. So, well, this was what I said. And I think that in some situations, if you can't make up your mind, you can say it depends. And then you outline the different scenarios and what you would do in each situation. It's a perfectly viable tactic, and it's a nice way to essentially take the initiative of speaking at length. And as for Hoy, as you can see, when you read a script, you clearly demonstrate the ability to speak in chunks of words, and this is the kind of rhythm that you need to present when you're doing the speaking test, right? You clearly know how to divide sentences. Your pronunciation is, pleasant, right? It's very clear and it's not corny. So you have a lot of, good points already. It's just that when you speak by yourself, you tend to go back and forth, with word choices and ideas. Like you can't make up your mind, which is hella annoying, right? So make this one of the most important missions you have to accomplish in preparation for your test. You have to make sure that you learn to, develop ideas in a sensible way. If you find yourself going back and forth, choosing, let's say, just a basic word to express a very simple idea, well, punish yourself by going over that idea 10 times. I mean, that's something that I do for myself as well. Like when I rehearse some of the speaking part three answers in preparation for my own speaking test, that's what I do. Right? I know the answers already, but I still fumble the ball every once in a while. And when I do that, I'm gonna force myself to go through the entire answer again, while also trying to iron out all of the possible, unnecessary pauses. Okay, that's all. Any question thus far? Huyền, any question?
No.
So I guess the point of these answers is to illustrate that you can extend your ideas in a variety of ways. And essentially you just need to opt for the direction that allows you to keep on speaking. Okay? Now, ooh, all right. Tang, please. How do you feel when people don't return the things that they have borrowed from you?
Well, I guess it depends on the object. I mean, for certain things, I don't mind people not returning them to me. And oftentimes, these are very trivial things like, you know, pens, pencils, and erasers. Essentially, all the things that I can easily buy again. And there are also other things that will probably make me mad if people don't return them to me. And one of those things is money. And I guess the reason here is pretty obvious. We all have to work around the clock to make a living. So when you do lend people money, you do so expecting that they will keep their word and return the money to you.
The rhythm was off in the last sentence. So when you do lend people money, you do so expecting that they will keep their word and return the money to you.
So when do you, sorry, so when you do lend people money, you do so expecting that they will keep their word and return the money to you.
Okay. Well, this is another example of an answer that does not really have a clear trajectory right from the get-go. right? When that happens, you can just say that, well, it depends, and then you explore different options. And that's something that I highly recommend all of you to do because it helps to cultivate a very positive, speaking habit. Like you don't rely on, asking for an easy way out, which is again something that Tang did in speaking part one. Yeah, Tang, you know what? I'm gonna twist the knife a bit further into your wound by repeating what you did at the beginning of the test, right? At the beginning, I didn't really know how to call it, but I do now. So I want to throw you under the bus whenever I can, right? Don't opt out. You have to take the initiative of, extending your answers. Even when, as you can see, from this particular example, these ideas are not sophisticated by any stretch of the imagination. The grammar is also not that complex. As you can see, this is a transcript from, a realistic answer that I did. And that's why you see all of these, full stops and like commas that would oftentimes not appear in, more polished works of mine. Okay, let's continue. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, the next question then. Huyen, please, do you like to lend things to others?
I don't think so, but it's mostly because people don't really borrow things from me. I think that one of the reasons is because I'm working as a freelance teacher, so I don't have a lot of colleagues. And the only person that tends to borrow things from me would be my mom. And she only asks me for money. But of course, when it comes to my mom, I'm not lending her money. I'm just giving her the money. But of course, she's prideful. So she always says, so so she always said that she will give me back the money. It's not something that I would count on.
Mm, okay, so the intonation was a bit off at the end. All right, let me do that again. But all right, so she only asks me for money. But of course, when it comes to my mom, I'm not lending her money. I'm just, giving her the money. But of course, she's prideful. She always says that, she will give me back the money. But it's not something that I would count on, right? So I think that when you speak by yourself, you can use like natural intonation to deliver these sentences. But of course, these are not yours. These are my sentences. So you probably didn't really, read between the lines to, see the emotional aspect of this answer. Let's do it again. But of course, she's prideful.
But of course, she's prideful, so she always says that she will give me back the money. It's not something that I would count on.
Yes, okay. There was a bit of that vocal frying at the end. Is that vocal frying or fried vocals? Vocal frying, right? There was, a bit of like vocal frying at the end, but I thought that it was a very natural thing to do, right? For this particular answer, I would imagine that, if the ball is in your court, all three of you will probably stop here, right? I don't think so, but it's mostly because people don't really borrow things from me. And I think that one of the reasons is because I'm working as a freelance teacher, so I don't have a lot of colleagues. I I've got a strong feeling that all three of you would just stop here. But you see, this is kind of like you opting out. You need to, keep pushing forward with your answers. So, right? The next part illustrates that. If you're struggling, fine, just, you know, vent it out, right? Just verbalize your thoughts, think out loud, but then you have to, push the content out a bit more by perhaps, choosing a different direction, or take a stroll down the memory lane and tell a story. Right? Essentially, that's a habit that I feel like all three of you need to have. Yeah, that's it. That's the point of this particular answer. Don't just give up, even when you feel like your two sentences are already sufficient. That's usually not how it works. Okay, any question thus far, Tom?
So far, I haven't had any questions.
Okay, let's move on then. So that's it for speaking part one. When it comes to uncommon topics in speaking part one, I do have to say that it can be quite tricky for you to, find um find an opening for you to slide in fancy words and idioms. If you use topic specific words, that would be really nice. But then again, if you don't talk about mirrors, or if you don't talk about hairstyles, then like you're gonna be out of your comfort zone. And like when you're out of your comfort zone, it's hard enough that you have to pull yourself together instead of having a meltdown right then and there. It's even harder for you to, think clearly and maintain a high level of, accuracy as you speak. So, in my opinion, when it comes to like uncommon questions in speaking part one, what you have to do is to focus on fluency and don't opt out, right? Do not tap out after two sentences because that's essentially you signing on bombing the test. Okay? Now let's move on. We have a speaking part two script here. I think the purpose of this particular sample is what is the purpose of this sample? Oh, okay. So I noticed that when you prepare like your response to speaking part two, you guys tend to be very topic specific, which is a good thing, which is a good thing. But the problem is, speaking part two is not always about a technical description. It's more of a personal account of something. So I think that, throughout my course, I've always made the same point. Like in speaking part two, you definitely need to, say something that is related to the topic that is given to you. So, the ideas that, cater for that particular purpose are called topic specific. But, that's not the only thing that you should bring to the table because in many situations, you know next to nothing about, a product or service. So if you choose to go down that path, then soon enough you will find that your back is against the wall and you can't really progress any further, right? So my advice has always been for you to incorporate some of the mini stories that you have developed throughout the years or throughout the lessons, right? For me, I always talk about my work, right? Sometimes I talk about my schedule, sometimes I talk about the weather outside, but essentially there are always these extra elements that are not definitively tied to the topic that I'm given. Okay? So Hoi, I would like you sorry, Hian, I'd like you to read the first part and then Hoi the last part. All right? Now, Hian, please. Okay, so the traditional product.
So the traditional product that you
Mm.
Mhm. So the traditional product that sprang to my mind when I read the question was silk. So I want to
Oh, no,
talk
no,
about
no.
that today.
Not my mind. My grammar was correct. Sprang to mind, not sprang to my
Ah,
mind.
So the traditional product that
Oh,
sprang to mind
okay.
when I read
The traditional product that, sprang to mind. Careful.
so the traditional product that sprang to mind when I read the question was silk. So I want to talk about it today. Well, I don't know much about silk, to be honest. outside of the fact that it's a clothing material. And I guess one of the defining characteristics of this particular material is the fact that it's very breathable and it's very high maintenance. Like people who wear silk tend to be very wealthy and they have to preserve their silk clothes in specific ways, which I obviously don't know because I don't wear silk. My mom has purchased silk products a few times, but I think that because of the fact that it's really hard to keep the clothes together, she has also decided to switch to other more durable materials.
Now, I first learned about this traditional product when I was a high school student, and it was actually a part of my chapter in chemistry. And I think that it was organic chemistry. I remember the particular part because it was really hard for me at the beginning, and I just couldn't really wrap my head around what my teacher was talking about. And there was this project at the end of the unit, and we had to do some research into some clothing materials. And of course, our team decided to go with silk. And I have to say that,
All right.
and I have to say, at the beginning, when I read about silk, I didn't really understand its importance to our culture, and I only focused on the chemical composition of the material. And after that,
Okay, good. So, let me just be blunt here. So as you can see, the only topic-specific part of this entire speech is the first part, right? Topic-specific. Topic-specific. Okay, now, as you can see, the first paragraph, or maybe in this case, the second paragraph, is about some background information related to silk as a material, right? I guess one of the defining characteristics of this particular material is the fact that like it's super breathable and it's very high maintenance. Like, people who wear silk tend to be very wealthy and they have to preserve their silk clothes in specific ways, which I obviously don't know because I don't wear silk, right? After that, though, I deliberately pulled my mom in because I talk about her shopping habits all the time. So this is not topic specific. It just worked out in this particular context, right? My mom has purchased silk products a few times, but I think, because of the fact that, it's really hard to keep the clothes together, she has also decided to switch to other more durable materials. So this may sound like something that was specifically hammered out for this topic, but it was not. The original idea was something like, my mom has also purchased, products from this particular shops more than a few times, and apparently she thinks that, she has always got a good bang for her buck. So, she has never really, gone out of her way to buy from other shops. And I think that it's a very interesting type of obsession, even though that's not something that I can get behind myself, right? So the original script is more like, just the general description of my mom's shopping habits. So it can also be something like, all right, so my mom often buy things on Lazada, and I guess, what is really interesting about that experience for her is that she usually keeps tabs on discount codes so that she can buy what she wants without having to pay lots of money or without breaking the bank. And I think that it's a very interesting thing to do, even though I myself don't do it, right? So what I'm trying to say is that this is another version of another typical description of my mom's shopping habit. So it's something like, so she bought from the shop a few times, and apparently she has bought, and apparently she thinks that she gets a good bang for her buck. or her book. In some other script, I also say that a notable bonus is that there are lots of discounts which she keeps tabs on so that she can buy the things that she wants without breaking the bank, right? So essentially, this is like the shorter version of a more complete idea. And I think that I've talked about, my mom and her shopping habits on a few occasions, but not in this class, right? But what I'm trying to tell you is that if you think about it, the only thing that is really, really topic specific about this entire script is the first paragraph, right? So with that said, let's move on to the next one. Now, I first learned about this traditional product when I was in high school, when I was a high school student. And guess what? I'm gonna drag everything back to, that script about, my learning experience, right? It was actually a part of a chapter in chemistry, and I think that it was organic chemistry, right? I remember that particular part because it was really hard for me at the beginning. I just couldn't really wrap my head around what my teacher was talking about. And there was this project at the end of the unit, and we had to do some research into some clothing materials. And of course, our team decided to go with silk. So from here to here, this is really just another version of a typical idea concerning my studies, right? That's all. I think that, in some versions in, other courses, I might say something like, when we first did some research into this material, it was really hard. And I mean, I clearly did not hit the ground running because like there were so many formula and I just couldn't really wrap my head around, what was going on. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, I put in lots of hours, on the internet and watching YouTube videos, but things just didn't make sense for me. But then, somewhere towards the end of the project, everything started to, fall into their places. So, I got a firmer grasp of the content that we were about to present to our teacher. And lucky for us, we pulled through that presentation with good marks, right? As you can see, it's a typical idea because, well, evidently, I was going through that entire script completely off the cuff. Nobody asked me any question, right? So that was just, a moment of improvisation. And like when I talk to people who want to prepare for the test, I notice that most of you tend to take the cue card that you are given very seriously and you plan in a very organic way, which is great, right? It means that you're an authentic person. But for someone like me, to be honest, this year I've scored a few nines in speaking. And like the other day, I was supposed to talk about what was I supposed to talk? Sorry, what was I required to talk about again? I was required to talk about um something that I saw in the sky, like a firework, right? And I said that I went to Sabah to see a particular sunrise. But I spent like 1 minute and 50 seconds of that damn test to talk about the fact that, I was, working for my previous company at the time. And because I was the head of the science department, I was wearing multiple hats and, there were lots of projects. So I was just working around the clock. Then somewhere down the line, I felt like, I was running on empty. So I asked my colleagues to, hop on a train and go to Sabah right? So we were in Sapa and then we decided to do something fun. And my friend suggested that, we would go to the mountains to see a sunrise, right? And I was a bit hesitant at first because it was not my favorite thing to do. I was there to heal and to recharge my batteries. But then, I decided to, jump on the bandwagon as well, right? And then so on and so forth. And I had literally only 5 seconds to talk about the fact that, okay, so I was there to see the sunrise, and it was spectacular. And that was it, right? That was it. So what I'm trying to tell you, and also I got a 9 for that. So what I'm trying to tell you is that in speaking part two, it's not that much about the topic that you're given. So, Ian, when you talk about outside, don't focus excessively on the item because I feel like if you want to, approach the topic in a very technical way, you're signing a death sentence for that test. Okay. And the same thing did happen to Tang when he decided to focus excessively on, the product or, whatever it was that he was talking about. Like he was still able to, speak for 2 minutes, but I thought that, the whole thing about you being a Lexophile, for me, it's a bit tiring, right? But it came in a tad too late. That's all, right? And yeah, that's the purpose of this particular sample. It's not something that you will hear from, IELTS examiners, right? Or in your IELTS trainers. They will probably instruct you to, prepare for like different topics. They will also probably advise you to, group different topics together. And these are perfectly viable tactics, but for very, high level candidates, um, usually, there are other tactics that you can employ. And one of them is that sometimes just drag, the ideas that you have become really familiar with into your speech, right? That helps to simplify the equation because, I mean, you could definitely need to focus on the topic specific part because if you bomb that part, your entire speech might disintegrate altogether, right? But after that, you need to essentially have a safety net to fall on so that you can recharge yourself, right? And to do that, you need to figure out what kinds of ideas do you often employ, right? I mean, for me, I often talk about, as you can see, my mom's shopping habits. I might borrow her shopping habits and describe them as if they were my own, right? If push comes to shove and I run out of things to say, um, I often talk about the fact that, I was super interested in chemistry, and I can always talk about the time when I learned something in a particular way because, I do tend to learn things in a particular way. At the beginning, I tend not to hit the ground running, right? And I tend not to be, that fast on the uptick, right? And it's not for lack of trying because I do spend lots of hours on, learning whatever it is that I'm supposed to learn. It's just that things don't make sense to me. I can't wrap my head around what I'm trying to learn, right? But then, something happened and everything started to make sense to me, right? But there was a steep learning curve, okay? So these are all the ideas that I use again and again from time to time. So that's what I would encourage you to do in speaking part two. But this is something that you have to figure out on your own because, after band 6.5, I feel like it's really hard for you to actually take advice from me unless, you've had your fair share of like failing the speaking test, right? I mean, I've learned the hard way myself. I mean, just a couple of months ago, right? At that time, I was already a 9 overall, and 9 in speaking as well. But there was that topic of describing, an advertisement that impressed you. I decided to talk about the new iPhone. And there was an ad that really struck a chord with me, but I didn't know how to describe in the inflatable figure in that video. I said inflated figure, but the phrase inflated figure has a different meaning. It means a number that has been largely exaggerated. So that's, a financial term. But the bottom line was that I essentially thought that I could, just wing it, but I didn't. And I got a 7.5 for speaking, which really got on my nerves. Right? So yeah, that's the point of this speaking part two script. It's the best option is always for you to perhaps, include at the very least 50% of the ideas that you're already very familiar with, right? And then 50% of topic specific ideas. Okay, so that's why you need to have mini stories. My mini stories often revolve around the fact that I'm busy or I'm free, um, or maybe my shopping decisions, the way that I spend money, the way that I learn something, the things that I pay attention to when, I choose to buy an object. But that's part of shopping habits, right? Yeah, I mean, just, these ideas. I also talk about weather every once in a while. But weather is not my strong suit. Neither is fashion. Right? Okay. Any question thus far? Corey, any question?
No.
All right, let's move on. We can cover this part later on. But essentially, the point of this particular part of the exercise is that I would like you to take my script here, take my script, and check if you can use this script to any extent to talk about one of these topics here, right? And you have to be very creative. And you can put your own spin on my ideas, but don't don't create a completely new answer, right? That's not the point. The point is to test to see if if an idea can be used in different contexts. So I guess we can give it a try now. Here, the traditional product that sprang to mind when I read the question was silk, right? So the first part is about, the 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 characteristics of this material, and then my mom's shopping habit, and the way that I learned about this traditional product. Okay. Do you think that we can use that script to talk about, well, a time when you search for information on the internet? All right, this is the easiest one. Um, Hoy, what do you think? What is the percentage of the original script that you can use?
I think it would be around 50 to 70%. Because
70%? You're too strict. It's 100% without a question. This would be the time when you search for information regarding silk. It's 100%. Okay? Just change a few words, but it's 100% compatibility rate. Just look at this. Just change a few words here and there, and then voila, you get a new answer for a different topic, right? How about this? A present that you have been given, Hian.
What was the question again? Describe
Describe a
present.
present you have been given.
Yeah, I can link it to the script.
Sure, but what is the percentage that you can link to?
think 90%.
Mm. So this present would be
Silk.
silk, right? You would talk about one of the definitive characteristics of this material, right? Okay. But you might want to leave out this detail here, right? Understand? Like when you adapt
Yeah.
this script, you have to make it make sense. Okay. You can certainly talk about your mom, in this case, my mom. Mm. Can you talk about the time when you first got to know about silk as a tradition? Sorry, feeling extra bloated today.
We can.
We can, right? You can say that, okay, so I was given a silk shirt or a silk something, right? A silk scarf. And the first time I learned about this traditional product was when I was, right? So on and so forth. Yeah. And perhaps somewhere down the line, you can say that, well, I guess that there are many things that I like about this particular gift. Silk, the scarf that I was given had a very nice design, and it was also in very vibrant colors, which I loved. Right? That was it. That would have been it. Okay. Describe a place you like to visit. Tang, please.
I would say about 90%. And what I want to add is like maybe a silk village or something like that.
That can be a challenge, but okay. I mean, if push comes to shove, then that approach is totally legit, right? It's just
Mhm.
that for the time being, um, um, what was I supposed to say again? I'm so absent-minded today.
Mhm.
Okay, I guess you could say that, if you want to adapt this particular script into this topic, then you're gonna have to change a few things, right?
Yeah.
But that's possible. A vi a silk making village. And you can say, I first learned about this village when I was in high school, and there was this project, right? There was this project about different traditional villages in my country, and the teacher just gave us a theme, and our team just took the ball and ran with it. So we did a lot of research into this Vat Phúc village, somewhere in the north or in the south of Hanoi. I mean, I don't know where it is, to be honest. Right? Nice. 90%. If push comes to shove. But I don't assume that you would actually do it because there's so many other options. I mean, personally, I would not talk about anything related to silk if I'm given the topic of a place that I would like to visit. Because for me, it's Sapa without a question. Okay? Yeah. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you need to see the ideas that you have developed from multiple angles and try to use them in as many contexts as possible, especially in speaking part two. Okay? I mean, there's nothing wrong with like being super authentic and coming up with novel ideas or ideas that specifically address certain topics. I just don't think that, is the most optimum way. All right, let's move on to speaking part three. I think that I only need to highlight one answer here. Hmm, I'm being a lot more selective now. In the past, I used to go through all the sample answers, which would drag this lesson to like 10 or 10, 20, right? Which was exasperating. But okay. Now, the last question here. Tang, please. Why is it important for children to learn about traditional products?
I think that there are many reasons for that. For one thing, I think that when the children learn about traditional products, it can be a very interesting experience because they learn about something that they can relate to. And instead of forcing the kids to write down information, perhaps they can do their own things. Perhaps teachers can give them a theme and allow the kids to just take a ball and run with it. And after 2 or 3 weeks, they can do their own presentation. And personally, I think it's a wonderful experience just for the purpose of exploring knowledge and being involved in the process of discovering knowledge and putting the pieces together to make a nice presentation.
Okay, one question. Is this answer solely about the reason for children to learn about traditional products?
Uh, I don't think so. I think
Mm.
maybe for the first I think the only sentence that are directly related to the question is the first one. And from the
Maybe the
second
second
one,
one.
maybe
Yeah, the
second, and
second
from
one.
then onwards, it's all about like way of teaching kids in general.
Good, right? So I'm being very blunt here. Um, Again, there's nothing wrong with sticking to the script. Essentially, just answer the question that's given to you. It's just that if you approach IELTS speaking questions like that, a lot of times you're putting yourself in a very difficult position, right? So what I'm trying to show you through my authentic sample answers is that like you can't be too polished all the time. And when you're speaking, what they're after is actually your ability to engage in a discussion. So it's not so much about presenting like concise points. If you can be succinct, it's great. I mean, if you don't have to beat around the bush, then fine. But there's nothing wrong with, just drifting to another realm of content as long as it has something to do with what you have already said. In this case, I am still answering the question. It's just that, it's not the best way to do so because it does not actually elaborate on the reason why, right, children need to learn about traditional products. I'm just saying that, it can be a very interesting experience. And then I'm going to proceed to explain how, right, it can be an interesting experience. Instead of forcing kids to write down information, perhaps they can do their own things. Teachers can give them a theme. Do you see this part here? Who do you see this part here? Perhaps teachers can give them a theme and allow the kids to just take the ball and run with it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Do you remember that I had just used in this particular phrase only a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Good, right? So as you can see, like I repeat a lot of what I say from time to time. So this is like a typical idea for me, right? And there are other things like that as well. You can find other examples here. But essentially what I'm trying to show you is that like when you do the speaking test or when you speak in general, unless you're being interrogated by police officers who only operate on, you know, um, dichotomies, essentially, questions with only yes or no as answers, right? If you don't have to, stick to that sort of, binary interrogation, then you know, should probably learn to develop your ideas in different ways, right? And this is different from writing, because for writing, you have to be airtight all the time, right? Everything you write must be planned ahead of time. Don't try to test your luck by winging it, because you're definitely gonna, you know, um, you're gonna take an L for that. But yeah, that's the point that I'm trying to make here. In speaking part three, try to extend your ideas in different ways, which is a very nebulous thing to say, but you can read through my scripts here. These are all authentic answers. And as you can tell, they're not that super focused on the original point of the question. I just address the question, and then I'm gonna say, all right, well then you can make it interesting by doing this and this and this and this, right? And by the time that I reach the end of the first idea, it's already very clear that I know how to discuss. Okay? And that's what you want to have when you do the speaking test. Okay, good. I think that I've already ticked out all of the essential boxes for today's lesson. Have you got any question for me, Huyền?
No,
I assume that this is not your first speaking lesson.
I watch a video that you sent me.
I'm talking
The
about like
thing,
speaking lessons in general.
no, it's not.
Mm.
I took the test 2 years ago, and I also took a preparation course.
And is there any difference to what I'm doing right now?
And I don't really remember the previous course I took, but I'm learning a lot.
We'll see. Okay. Corey, any question?
No.
Well then, good luck, and I'll see you soon. Okay. Bye bye.